Welcome to Member Spotlight, presented by the Community Broadband Action Networker, CBAN. I'm Curtis Dean, and we're really excited to have one of the very first CBAN provider members on our Member Spotlight today. The name of the company is Router12. The guy you see on the screen is Ryan Malek. Ryan, thanks for agreeing to do this.
Yeah, thanks.
Glad to be able to shine the spotlight a little bit on Router12. Full disclosure, Ryan and I have known each other a long time, pretty good friends, and so. But I'll try to treat you professionally, Ryan.
All right. Sounds good.
We're used to giving each other crap a lot, so we don't have to worry about that today. So, Ryan, first of all, maybe explain to everybody what your background is. How did you get involved in telecommunications?
Well, straight out of high school, I was obsessed with the internet and connectivity, and I've been involved in some type of communications ever since. Started in the dial-up world. Ran more than a few modem racks back in the day. Eventually moved into the DOCSIS and HFC arena. Ran cable plant for about 10 years. Added wireless to that mix over that time, and eventually branched off and started my own wireless ISP. And now we are moving into the fiber arena as well. So,
great. So, I got to ask this because I always had to ask you when I first met you. What does Router12 mean?
It's a very old name that came up in my younger days. As I said, I was always interested in the internet and servers and networking, and servers always need a host name. Mm-hmm. So I had an ISP probably 25, 30 years ago that was nice enough to let me put a server out on their network. And of course, the first thing they ask is, what is this thing named? So I had to come up with a name on the spot, and it ended up being Router12.
Well, you did all right. It's obviously the name is stuck, and you've grown a lot during that period of time with the name. So you mentioned that you had worked for another company running a cable plant, essentially. Not afraid to name names. I think they're pretty proud to have you work there. That was Osage Municipal Utilities, which is also a CBAN provider member. What made you decide you wanted to essentially hang your own shingle and be your own ISP after that experience and start doing some fixed wireless internet?
Like I said, I've always been interested in communications. I love building networks. That's what I love doing. The initial plan was actually to go out and be a consultant and integrate cable modem termination systems for other internet service providers. And I have done that, and I still do that. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of network optimization for ISPs and deployment as well. But necessity is the invention or the mother of invention.
Sure.
So the beginning of Router12 was actually my wife's business was not able to get backups offsite overnight. It took longer than a day to push backups offsite. Oh, wow. And the idea of taking tapes and in a car and taking them home at night was just clunky, and I hated it. So I knew people from the industry. We found out that there's fiber out in front of the building. The building that she is in and my office is now attached to happened to be an old radio station, and there was a 300-foot tower out back. I had a working relationship with this radio station as well. So I took the fiber, I put it together with the wireless on the tower, and there we go. There's my first tower. Wow. And then from there, demand just kind of took over, and wherever there was demand, we went with it. So
it's amazing what happens when you produce a quality product. Suddenly everybody wants it.
Oh, absolutely.
And you guys really, I mean, organic growth was been a big part of your success, right?
Absolutely. We never set really, really high bars and raised a bunch of investment or borrowed a bunch of money to go after it. It was almost all OpEx going into a new tower, and mm-hmm. we would let it grow. And then once we've established what we wanted, we would move on to the next tower.
And for a long time, you were a company of one. I remember those days. It was kind of hard to get a hold of Ryan because he was either climbing a tower or driving a car or at a house. You were a busy guy for a long time.
Oh yeah, and now we have 10 employees. So
Wow, that's fantastic. So you mentioned start on the wireless part. You're doing wireless internet services in North Central Iowa. What kind of technology are you deploying, and what kind of services do you offer on that fixed wireless platform?
sure. So most of what we have is unlicensed 5 gigahertz. Um, for the most part, it works really well. There's some areas that are super congested, and we have techniques to deal with that using narrower beam widths, using more antennas with or, uh, tighter patterns on them.
Mm-hmm.
Helps alleviate some of that noise. We also have some lightly licensed CBRS equipment out there, and we're moving to kind of using more of that because it keeps us in a space that home routers aren't interfering with us. People just putting up backhauls between buildings doesn't interfere with us. So we've done a lot of that. Um, we also have some LTE out there. LTE has been fantastic for really good penetration through non-line of sight areas. Here in Iowa, we have a lot of trees.
Yeah, we do,
So
and a few hills here and there.
anytime we're in town, we're battling the trees,
Yeah.
and CBRS has definitely made that a lot easier for us to get out there.
So if you look at across your whole footprint now, what kind of customer base you have, without sharing any trade secrets?
Uh, you mean the number of subscribers?
Yeah, yeah, that's what I meant.
Uh,
Ballpark.
we're we're sitting at about 1,500 subscribers, I think.
Excellent, excellent. So you mentioned fixed wireless, and then you starting to do some fiber to the home projects. Talk about the evolution there. Why did you decide to start deploying some fiber services?
So in town, it's always a battle with the trees, um, and with fiber, you don't necessarily have to fight against those trees.
Right.
Um, on top of that, some of the equipment that we use, we're not necessarily. It's not the most efficient to use. LTE is a fantastic technology, and it's very complex. So when it's working, it's great, and when it's not working, it's an absolute nightmare.
Mm,
So some of this was to where we had an established LTE base, we would go out and fiber it because it's less maintenance in the long run. And in a denser population, the cost to deploy it is about the same.
really?
So by the time we've built this, we can go pull all that LTE equipment, go down, deploy it somewhere else, and just keep moving on. So
That's kind of the secret, isn't it? To reuse or reposition equipment. If you say move from one type of technology, whether it be one type of fixed wireless to another, or from fixed wireless to fiber, is to reposition that equipment somewhere else where you can serve additional people.
absolutely. And during COVID and even post COVID, not that we're too far past it here, um, supply chain issues became a huge problem. So when we would get fiber in, it meant, hey, we can go deploy this and we can get some of our LTE equipment back and we don't have to go source more. And that was the biggest problem with that is
Hmm.
trying to get more of it in it was very hard to find.
So now that you're starting to do some fiber, talk a little bit about your footprint, where you're at doing fiber, what your growth plans are there.
Sure. So we started with a very small town, Swelldale. You can find it on a map, but
Swedale, Iowa. Yeah.
it was very easy town to do. It's square. The right of ways were very large. There's almost no underground power. There's no underground gas. So it was a very good place for us to start and go, okay, we don't necessarily know entirely what we're doing, but we're going to start here. And, we got the bumpers on and there's just not much to run into. Um, so that deployment took a lot longer than I expected. And that's fine. We learned a lot of stuff while we were doing it. We are pretty much done with Swedale now, with the exception of hooking up customers.
Hmm.
And we moved down to Thornton. That's the next town in our path. We have about one third of the infrastructure for Thornton built. It's not spliced yet, so hopefully it'll stay warm enough to get that done very soon. Um, and then in the spring we'll go after that. And then also we will have some NOFA 7 awards for rural areas that we do need to build. We've got quite a while to build them, but obviously we'd rather get them done and get everything signed off and keep on moving.
Now, in the spirit of Router 12, kind of a do it yourself type of operation, right? You're doing most of this work yourself, engineering, designing, building, the whole thing?
Yep, absolutely. Everything has been in-house to this point.
Wow.
There's a few places in our future projects that I think we might contract. We have some river crossings that I'm not sure we necessarily want to risk our equipment with. And we have some aerial spans that probably need to be done as well that we're just not tooled for. So we'll probably contract some of that. But pretty much all of it has been in-house. It's been a fantastic learning experience.
I bet. I bet.
But when you design it yourself, you know where everything is, you know how it works. And you also learn the things that, oh, hey, I shouldn't have done it this way. Next time we're going to do it this way. And we're already taking those lessons and applying them to our projects, and it's definitely been a good experience.
Talk about your experience with applying for and receiving grant funding. That's something a lot of operators have done. Some of them are excited about it. Some of them are scratching their heads. What's your experience been? You mentioned NOFA 7. That was, for those of you who don't know, that was the last funding round that the state of Iowa did. It was sourcing federal funds. It was sourced from federal funds, but then the state awarded the funds. How's that process felt for you?
So we were actually NOFA 3 winners as well.
Okay.
So we have some perspective into how the process has changed.
Yeah.
NOFA 3, the state is absolutely fantastic to work with on this. The group that runs the NOFAs is amazing. The application process and the sign-off process can be very intimidating. There's no doubt to that. But it's all procedural. You just kind of have to step through it, make sure you understand the rules going into it and what you're going to be required to provide at the end of the project to sign off on it. And I think that's where a lot of people have tripped up is they didn't realize how much documentation they needed towards the end. And most of it is accounting. When you're talking about treasury dollars, they're very specific on they want every single cent.
Yes,
and
they
I'm
do.
being very literal on this. They want every single cent accounted for in the form of an invoice, a receipt. They want proof that it passed through your bank account.
Yep.
So there's a lot of that. It's all procedural. You just got to make sure you're following the rules when you do it. And that includes the application process as well. They very clearly defined the ranking criteria and what was most important, what was least important. So you just had to keep all that in mind when you were designing your projects. But overall, it's been a fantastic experience. We have not finished any of our NOFA 7 projects yet, so I don't know how much different the sign-off process was. The application process was pretty similar, but over time, the rules have gotten a little bit more strict. I think there were some abuses that they were trying to head off, and the changes they made will probably eliminate most of those. But overall, it's been a good experience.
Well, I can give you a little hint about the NOFA 7s because I've worked on a couple of them. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's more than the previous NOFA 3s, and it's because it's federal money, and the federal rules are different. The state of Iowa, like you said, I think everybody agree. Everybody's gone through that process. Has high praise for the Iowa OCIO office. The folks there, they really are just they're there to help. They're not there to find gotchas. But even with NOFA 7, they're still there to help and not find gotchas, but they're somewhat more restricted on what they can or cannot do. So. Have fun with that. I wish you all the luck in the world. I've been just trying for 3 weeks to get on the portal so I can update some numbers for one of my clients. So for any other aspiring entrepreneurs out there that are looking to do something cool like you're doing, Ryan, whether it's telecommunications or not, any advice for those people? Is it, just do it, or think about it, or don't do it?
Um, Develop a good plan,
Okay.
and that good plan is going to involve you talking to other people. Um, there are so many people out there that if you just go, hey, I'm looking to do this project and it's similar to what you're doing, could you talk to me about your experiences and what has gone right for you, what hasn't gone right for you? There are a lot of people out there that are more than happy to help you and say, hey, you don't even look at this because this is a bad idea. You
Right.
should be looking this way. And then you have to take into consideration all of them are saying this from the perspective of their network and what they've built. Um, there's more ways of building this than there probably are networks out there,
Sure, there are.
and there are a lot of people that will insist that their way is the right way, and really the right way is whatever works for
Yeah.
you. There was a there was a training session I did many years ago, and I'm pretty sure it was through a cable organization that I belong to,
I know which one you're
um,
talking about.
and they were specifically talking about fiber, and they're like, look, okay, there's so many standards. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, and this contractor will come and say this is the way you should do it. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get light from point A to point B so that you can provide a service. And that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do that and it's reliable and you can maintain it and manage it, that's all that matters.
Right.
But it's pretty much the same in a telecommunications network. If you can provide a reliable service, it doesn't matter how obscure your method is, as long as it works.
Yeah, as long as
Um,
it works, and as long as you understand how it works, and the people you work for understand how it works. I think the
yep.
big problem sometimes that happens is one person designs a network or even a product that's outside of telecom. The next person comes in and they have no idea how the first person did it. You worry about the wrong guy getting hit by a bus. So hopefully you don't have that one problem in your
Well, and
organization.
that falls back on documentation again.
Absolutely,
So make
absolutely.
sure you have great documentation. But the biggest thing is just kind of get out there and do it, even if it's a small scale. If you're like, hey, I just want to set up one wireless tower,
Hmm.
there's not a lot of upfront investment in doing that. And you might get into this and go, wow, this is not really what I thought it was, and I'm not sure I want to do this. And then you're not out much.
Yeah.
Um, or you might start a fiber build and go, okay, I'm going to set a cabinet here. I'm going to get an upstream provider to bring me service, and I'm just going to feed these 10 businesses and see how it goes.
Hmm.
And I think you'd be surprised how fast that blows up and just becomes, hey, oh, well, now we're doing this thing.
Yeah. Then
So
you can become a victim of your own success
I
because
don't
then
know
everybody
anything about
wants it,
that.
and you're like, oh, how do I do that? Yeah, I think that's great advice for people that are out there. And one thing, and a word of caution, I'm sure you'll agree with, is it's not just as simple as throwing up an antenna and sitting back and counting the money. There's a lot of
Mhm.
work that goes into it, ongoing work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, you've obviously done a great job. Your crew at Router12 are doing a great job. Ryan, thank you for being a CBAN provider member, and thanks for joining us. We invite everybody, if you want to learn more about Router12, it's router12.net. If you are watching this and you live in north central Iowa, check them out because you might have service available or coming soon to your area, maybe. And when Ryan takes over the world, he's promised to let me go for a ride in his yacht.
True story.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. That's Ryan Malek from Router12, our guest and our topic today on our CBAN member spotlight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.